There's a chunk.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I want to give you a few tips on what is one of my all-time favorite baits, and realistically it's probably one of the best all-time fish catching baits throughout the entire bass fishing market. In fact, it's probably one of the best multi-species baits as well. Guys, this is a bait that you can throw in 2 feet of water, rig it in a weedless manner, or you can fish it in 50 feet of water on deep rocks. It's just a bait that we can rig in so many different ways. And specifically, it's just a tube. And I know a lot of you are like, well, this is just a video on a tube. Nothing special. I don't want to listen to this. But I assure you, I've got a couple of pointers that I think you're going to want to listen to because they will allow you to probably double your bites on a tube. I have found in my experience that I catch so many more fish by doing this, so I want to share it with you. You know, like I said, a tube comes in so many different shapes and sizes. In the musky world, it's now one of the top baits out there. This is a giant Red October baits, the 10-inch monster tube. This thing is giant. I mean, you can use it for big fish, you can use it for little fish, to the point where you can get some of these little Creme mini tubes for crappie. It catches so many fish because a tube does a phenomenal job at mimicking bait fish. Whether you're chasing fish that are feeding on perch, bluegill, shad, shiners, it doesn't matter. You can find tubes that will mimic the forage species that the fish are eating. And it's one of the most natural baits in that it has very good swimming motion and gliding motion, which generates reaction strikes, and that's what we're after. So a tube is a bait that I think you could have on year-round in almost any different fishing situation. But here's what I want to share with you guys. A tube is a great bait, but I'm telling you what, if you are not downsizing your tubes, you are missing out on a lot of bites. And specifically, I've got 2 styles of what I call micro tubes that I want to share with you. The first is a true small tube. In this case, this has been one of my go-tos. This is the new Max Scent. It's the little Berkley Max Scent power bait tube. This is the 2.5-inch style. They've got a full-size tube, which works great as well. And just for comparison, this is their standard 3.5-inch tube. And this is the little mini 2.5-inch tube. So you can see it's significantly smaller, both in width, length. It's a much smaller tube. So much so that one of the problems with these small tubes is finding a hook that fits them. I can't tell you the number of times I've talked to people that are like, well, I've tried to throw a small tube, but there's no hooks that are made for them. Well, there are some hooks that are made for them. The first one, and one of my favorites, this is a Northland short shank inner tube hook. That's what I've got in this one. So you can see, I'll pull it out for you. It's just a small tube hook, but it's a short shank, so it's meant to fit these small tubes. So if you're looking for a specific legitimate tube hook, this is the hook that you're going to want to use. It's one of my favorites. Now I will say it's a beefier style hook. It's a heavier gauge hook. So for throwing this, say, on bait casting gear, it's great. It can be a little bit heavy, in my opinion, for fishing it on really light finesse tackle. So if you're throwing 4 or 6 pound test with a light action rod, it might be a little bit heavy. In that case, what I do is I use a lot of the same hooks that I use on Ned Rigs. So one of my favorites, the Berkley half head. This is just the 1/8 ounce. You can see I've got it rigged right here. Take it out so that you can see it. So I've got the Berkley half head. I'll slide it up the little 2.5-inch tube. It works great. So for the most part, anytime you want to throw the little tubes, you can rig it on your Ned Rigs. So that's the half head in there. If you like throwing the Z-Man, the finesse TRD hooks, you can get those to work. So it works great. So I highly suggest going with a smaller tube. Now here's the last tip I want to share with you. Don't just necessarily stop with the 2.5-inch tubes. One thing that I have found over the years is that the smaller I continue to go, the more bites that I'm going to get. And they don't necessarily prevent me from getting really big fish to eat my baits. Now I showed you the crappie tube before. Guys, I'm telling you what, you go with one of these. The ones that I really like are the Creme. It's their Maxi tail. So it's a 2-inch crappie tube. So Creme makes a couple of tubes that are different sizes. The reason I really like these is because they're extremely available. In fact, almost every bait shop that you go into around the country will have small crappie tubes. I like the Creme ones probably because that's what I get in my local Fleet Farm. That's what I get in my local Taps and Tackle bait shops, because you can't buy them at Tackle Warehouse, and that's where I do the majority of my tackle shopping. But if I'm looking for these, what I want to point out with these, and the reason I really like these 2-inch Maxi tails, is because they're a little bit bulkier than the standard crappie tube. So this is the standard crappie tube. This is 1.5 inches, and Creme makes the 2-inch Maxi tail. So it's a little bit longer and a little bit thicker. Well, that allows me to rig it on more traditional bass gear. And the way I really like to fish this is just on a little Fusion 19 size 1 or size 2 drop shot hook, and I'll rig this on a drop shot. So I'm going to be fishing it just on a drop shot, and I'll tell you what, a little tiny tube, a 2-inch Maxi tail Creme tube, has caught me so many fish over the years. One of the awesome things about it too, especially if you're just looking for action, is you're not only going to catch bass, you're going to run into crappie, you're going to run into perch, rock bass, bluegill. You catch everything and you will generate so many strikes. But I cannot tell you the number of times that this little 2-inch tube has saved the day for me in terms of catching fish, whether I'm on a guide trip with clients, whether I've got my own kids out, or if I'm looking to fill a limit while I'm out on the water. So don't think you can't go super small with these micro tubes. It's really unbelievable to me how many additional bites you're going to get if you downsize to the 2.5-inch Maxcent tube or the 2-inch Maxi Tail Creme tube, which is meant for crappie, but it's a bass slayer. So guys, sometimes just because there's a crappie on the bag doesn't mean you can't catch them or use them to catch bass. That's all I'm going to say. It's unbelievable to me how many more bites you'll get and how much more entertaining fishing will be with going with small baits. So check those out. If you haven't tried the 2.5-inch Maxcent Berkley tube or the 2-inch Maxi Tail Creme tube, which is meant for crappie, I highly suggest you check them out because I think you'll find that you catch a bunch of fish on them. So thanks for watching, guys. If you're doing this, leave a comment in the comment section so that the rest of you guys out there who are watching don't think I'm just BSing with you. I want to know from you guys because I know there's a lot of guys out there that are doing this, and I know the majority out there have watched my videos and seen other people catching crappie on these tubes, but also catching a bass that gets mixed in while they're catching crappie. It always happens. You always catch bass. Well, think about using these to target bass instead of targeting crappie, and you'll catch a lot more bass. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Use this tip. Go catch a few extra fish. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.